Hello, you are listening to A Woman's Guide, episode 19. Do you dump your stuff on other people? Do others always have the issue and you don't? Why is it counterproductive to do this, and what consequences and effects does it have on relationships? Today's episode is how to overcome fear, projection. Stay tuned. To reclaiming wholeness after sexual abuse. For all of you listening, welcome to the show. I am Simone, your confidant and guide. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, so I thought this would be a very interesting topic to speak about. I just felt like this would be a really good topic to speak about. I mean, it does all tie into, I have my own, there's a method to my madness in terms of everything that I'm speaking about does tie in to this whole subject about becoming our best self and reclaiming our wholeness and not allowing certain habits and patterns to define us. So I know that this is another aspect of it. It's a branch that is coming from something that we need to rid ourselves of, which is fear, right? That's why I said how to overcome fear. Because what is behind this projecting on others, or projection, which I'll be discussing shortly, which I'll define in a little bit, is a fear-based behavior, okay? It's fear-based. So fear, I don't know if I've said it before or how many other times I've said it, but fear is something that is the opposite of love. And it is something that stops us from becoming our best selves. And it stops our growth, our healing, and of course, this is the biggest one, and this is why we need to overcome projection, because fear takes that understanding of having responsibility for ourselves away. Okay? It stops us from taking responsibility with ourselves, for ourselves. And ultimately, because there are levels to this, but ultimately the absolute root here is fear. And it is the only hindrance or block, and that manifests in many different forms, of course, to everything that we are trying to accomplish, overcome, and do. Everything that I'm speaking about in terms of overcoming, it is based in some kind of fear. It's based in some fear of being inadequate, not feeling good about yourself, not being enough, fear of being weak, powerless, fear. That's everything is about getting rid of fear. But it's just different, like I said, it's fear that manifests in different forms. Okay? So we need to rid ourselves of fear and its resultant behaviors, fear-based behaviors. We need to rid ourselves of this, or at least learn how to manage our feelings of fear, so that we do not engage in these type of things. But anyway, of course, I make it seem like, oh, we have to stop doing this and stop doing that, and it's just like we have so much to deal with as people, and as women, we have so much to deal with. So I'm not saying it like, oh, every little thing needs to be solved right now and today or tomorrow, or everything needs to be resolved. As human beings, we're always going to have something that we deal with. That's just how it goes. Okay, but we must strive to improve ourselves, or to rid ourselves of things that are not our true self, or not of our true self. It's not anything that's not of our true nature and essence. It's, I think it's really, we have to rid ourselves of that if we want to live our best life. But anyway, so for this episode, we're looking at how fear manifests as projection in our relationships and interactions with others. So now, I'm going to explain to you what projection is. So what is projection? And I don't mean that just in the general term in the dictionary, but the term in psychology, what projection means in psychology. And in my own words, just the way that I want to, how I want to say it, it really is projection occurs. So this is something that someone is doing. Projection occurs when someone who is experiencing, projection occurs for someone who is experiencing uncomfortable, painful, scary, frightening feelings, thoughts, impulses, whatever. They have certain qualities within themselves that are painful or scary or uncomfortable. It's anything that's uncomfortable, scary, or painful. They're experiencing these emotions, okay? And in an attempt to ease their anxiety or their pain of it, ultimately the fear of it, they project it or point it or direct it to another person. Okay, so I'll explain more about what I mean. I'll really get into it so you can understand fully about what I'm saying here. Okay, so ultimately, when someone feels like there's something within themselves, a thought, an opinion they have of themselves, a behavior, a quality, a characteristic, anything that they find that's undesirable, that they don't like, they find frightening, they cannot handle it, and they are in discomfort about it, or they're in pain about it, and they cannot handle it. So what they do is they somehow project it onto the other person. They want to make it about the other person instead of acknowledging or facing what's going on within themselves. But I'm going to get deeper into that. So anyway, it's really to just dissolve the awareness of their own stuff. I want to say stuff because it's just like I said, thoughts, ideas, impulses, characteristics, behaviors, qualities about themselves. They want to dissolve the awareness of themselves or of their stuff by seeing it within another person. What I want to zero in on today is the behavior of projection. It's the behavior of the projection, which means that the projector, the person who's projecting, is imagining that the other person, they're in this illusion. They are imagining that this other person has these qualities, behaviors, attributes, feelings, thoughts, impulses, whatever. Okay? And this projector, this person has this behavior. They have it. They have this behavior. The characteristic, feeling, thought, impulse. They have it. They're the ones that have it. Or you have it. You have this certain behavior or impulse. Okay? You have it. But then you attribute it to others because you're projecting. You cannot see or face or acknowledge what's going on within yourself, that you have to put it on someone else. And this is a subconscious defensive mechanism. Okay, this is like a pattern that was created out of fear, of not wanting to face the pain and the uncomfortable feelings within yourself. So it's a pattern, it's a subconscious defense mechanism where you are, well, and I'm going to get more deeper into that, because if you're following what I'm saying, you're saying, okay, well, if it's a subconscious defense mechanism, that means I can't help it. Okay, well, I'm going to get into that. So basically, if you are sitting there and you're having a behavior that you possess, and then you attribute to another, this is projection. And at times you, the projector, or maybe you're the projectee, maybe someone's doing this to you. At times the projector does something to elicit that same behavior that they find displeasing, unworthy, and what they're in fear about within themselves. Okay, so I hope you're following what I'm saying. So the projector, which is you, or if it's not you, does something to get that same behavior or characteristic or attribute or impulse that they have within themselves, that you have within yourself. But because you're so in fear about it, because you cannot fear and acknowledge it, subconsciously or consciously, you sit there and say, okay, this process is happening very, very quickly in your mind, but you get to the point in your mind where you're saying, okay, I'm going to attribute it to another person, because that way it's easier to acknowledge. The way it's easier to see. That way it's easy for me to manipulate, or I can handle it when I see it in another person, but when it's within me, I can't handle it. So I'm going to attribute it to another person. I'm going to put it on another person so that I don't have to deal with the uncomfortable feelings or the pain that come with me knowing that I have this attribute or characteristic or this issue or this behavior. Okay? So you as a projector, you do something to elicit the same behavior, response, or this characteristic that you're so in fear about within yourself. And then the other person responds and reacts in the way that you want them to react by demonstrating or manifesting this behavior. And this does happen because, human behavior, we're very responsive, we're reactive, we're very responsive, we're very reactive to other people. We pick up on the cues of other people's, words and their energy and their whatever it is that they're projecting out. We pick up on those cues and we respond in kind. So it's very easy for someone else to respond in a way that you intend for them to respond, because you're projecting energetically, you're doing things to get that response come out of that other person. Okay? So then when that person responds or reacts in the way that you want them to react, and this goes on a very deep level where sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing it. But I'm telling you, there's other times where you do know you're doing it. You do know that you're doing it. So that person responds and reacts with that kind of behavior. Now, the difference is for the projector, the person who is projecting these emotions and who does not want to face and deal with these issues. Okay? The projectee responds in kind with that behavior that you, within yourself as a projector, cannot deal with and face and look at or acknowledge within yourself. And perhaps that person, retaliates and they say something, and you in turn, because you're already feeling this way, but you can't acknowledge it, you respond to their response. But in this time, you justify the response that you have. Because in your mind, it is acceptable for you to behave that way. Because you remember, you're in fear about yourself. You're in fear about your own ideas of yourself. You're in fear about those behaviors and attributes. That's why you're projecting. And when that person responds and, they respond with anger, for example, if you're angry, okay, let's put it this way, okay? Say you're angry. You're really angry. You're clearly angry, okay? You're really angry. But you probably have gotten into such a habit where you don't acknowledge your feelings and you avoid your feelings, and so you're angry. Okay? You've created a habit to not acknowledge the fact that you're angry. Or you're angry. You're angry, but you don't acknowledge that you're angry. You're in a habit where you do not face your anger. So you're angry. And subconsciously or consciously, on some level, you project that onto the other person. So you do something, you say something to trigger someone, or you press a button, or you do something that you know is going to elicit that response of anger from the other person. So that person responds in anger. They respond with anger. Because like I said, humanistically, it's very easy for us to engage in this type of thing, or respond or react or do what that person wants us to do. And it all happens on a level where we're not even really aware of. We're not very aware of it because we're so wired that way. So that person responds to you with anger. And you're already feeling anger. Remember, you're feeling anger, but you just don't want to acknowledge to yourself. So that person says, hey, are you angry? And you say, no, you're clearly angry. And then you say something to elicit anger within them because you're projecting onto them with your anger because you can't face your own anger. That person responds in kind, and then they probably retaliate and say, hey, you did that on purpose. Why are you doing that? Or why are you being such a jerk or whatever? And then you say, and then you start to get angry, or you start to show your anger because you've already been angry anyway. But this time you're justifying your anger because it's really, in your mind, you don't believe that that's your anger. It's their anger. They're the ones that are angry. And, that person could say, see, I knew you were angry. I knew you were angry. And you say, no, I'm not angry. You're the one that's angry. I'm just responding to your anger. That's projection because you can't acknowledge your own anger. For example, there's many different kinds of projection. I'm going to get more into that, or different scenarios of how this projection can manifest. But it's like you say, no, I'm not angry. You're angry. Or because you're angry, I can be angry because you're being rude to me or you're being mean to me, even though you're the one that elicited that response. You're the one that facilitated that. You're the one that triggered that. But yet you're justified in acting and becoming angry. So that's another way, the way that the ego sits there and tries to cover its fragility. I can't even pronounce that word, but you know what I'm saying. It's fragile. Okay? It's fragile, and it wants to cover that up. Okay? In order to look good, in order to seem acceptable, or to feel acceptable, in order to not seem so insecure or whatever. So you are going to sit there and justify what it is that you're already feeling, but because you projected it onto someone else, they're the ones that own it, but you're the one who's responding to something that you really own yourself. But you can't admit that. Okay? You're saying, no, you're the one that's angry. It's not me. I'm just responding to what you're saying. Okay? So somehow your mind makes it unacceptable for them to be angry, which is what you feel unacceptable within yourself, which you find is unacceptable within yourself. And this is all happening inside of you. Okay? But because you projected it onto them and they behaved in kind that you wanted them to behave in, and you respond in that same behavior that you're trying to elicit that response from other people, and somehow it becomes acceptable only for you to do it. Are you listening to this? This is like a real thing here. This is a real thing. You somehow make it acceptable for you to do that. And that's how you protect your ego. And that's how you cover up your insufficiencies or your, insecurities or your feelings of not being enough or trying to have a certain image or to cover up your weakness, your feelings of weakness. That's really what it is. That's projection, guys. Or person, lady, I'm sorry, I'm really trying to talk directly to you instead of talking like an audience because I know individually you're downloading this. So I'm trying to talk to this specific person, you, whoever you are. Isn't that crazy? So then if you are following what I'm saying, you know for certain, okay? You know for certain this is about control, which is the ego, which is fear. That's what it is. It's fear, it's insecurity, it's wanting to maintain a certain image. It's not wanting to face, it's not wanting to deal with the self, the issues, your thoughts, feelings, behaviors. It's just not wanting to deal with yourself, what's going on inside of you, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what insecurities you have about something, or your perceived weakness, or your perceived thing inside of you that makes you feel vulnerable and weak or powerless That's what it is. Projection is it's a subconscious protective mechanism. It's a pattern, a protective defense mechanism pattern, okay, against the painful things in our minds. And this stems from, are you gonna guess what I'm gonna say? Trauma. Yes, trauma, childhood wounds and pains. Absolutely, because if you're going to get to that point where you cannot face what's going on inside of you, you cannot acknowledge your painful feelings, your insecurities, your thoughts, your behaviors, your impulses, your characteristics, your attributes, if you can't face it, you can't see it, you can't own it for yourself, that has got to be a protective defense mechanism. And where does the protective defense mechanism come from? You're trying to save yourself. You're trying to protect yourself. And why are you trying to protect yourself? It's because you have some deep wounds that you're trying to cover up. You have deep wounds that you're trying to cover up. Ultimately, that's what it is. Absolutely. You have something you are trying to cover up. That's why you cannot admit certain things. You have to look at it on levels, you know what I'm saying? Because if there's really at the absolute, let's say, if you're making an imagery, if you're at the absolute bottom part of your being, if you have a deep wound that has not been resolved or has not been acknowledged or healed or whatever, you're going to have all these different layers of things that come from that wound and that devastation. You understand what I'm saying? Where you're going to have layers of insecurities, layers of feeling inadequate, layers of feeling insecure, layers of feeling weak and powerless and shameful and guilty. You see how this all ties together? There's a reason why I make these videos the way that I do, because they all tie together somehow. They do. Okay? So if you're going to have all these layers where you're just layering on all of these insufficiencies or feelings of insufficiency and insecurity and inadequacy and low self-esteem and feeling powerless and weak and guilty and shameful, you're just going to keep protecting yourself layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, because each layer represents what's going on at the absolute bottom, which is that trauma and that wound that caused you to have all these layers of what you're feeling about yourself. So it all comes from somewhere. Yeah. If you are projecting, it's because you're trying to cover up something. If you are sitting there and you cannot face what's going on inside of you, and you can only see or point out what another person's doing, or only say that whatever you're doing is only a response to what they're doing, but you cannot see that it originates within you. You cannot see what's going on inside of you, but you can see what's going on inside of someone else, or on someone else, or with someone else. That is a protective defense mechanism. Something is shut down for you to not see that you have these things. You have this thing going on. But anyway, let me not, because I don't like to get ahead of myself. So let me just continue on. Okay? So anyway, for the projection, there are times, many, many times, even though I said subconscious defense mechanism, okay? There are many times that people do know that they are doing this to other people. They do know what they're doing. They do know. Sometimes the projector is aware. You are aware that this is your stuff and you are engaging in this projective behavior. And I know so, because I think for the majority of the time people they're not aware that they're doing this. But there are times where they're aware. I was aware when I was projecting, because I've had it happen to me and I've done it to other people, where I was sitting there and I knew, I was projecting, but it's like, I knew that I was doing it, but I still did it. I knew that I knew that I was covering up something because I could not face something within myself. I'm telling you, I've gone through it, so I know it. I know projection on a very deep level because I know that I've done it and I know what it entails, okay? Yes, it manifests for different people in different ways because there's different things like complementary projection and complementary projection and neurological projection, but those are other stuff that I don't really think I want to talk about for this video. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff about this projection thing. It's really deep. It's really deep. This is some really deep stuff. But I know projecting behavior in this way, you know, there are a lot of us, there are some of us, I should not say a lot, I don't know if it's a lot, but I know there are people, and I've witnessed other people who project, and it's like they know it. The things that they're saying to me, it's like they know that they're projecting. They know it. They know they have these insecurities. They know they have these feelings of low self-esteem. They know this, but yet they still go and project onto other people. They know this. They've admitted it to me, and yet they still go and do it. I'm telling you, projection you can be aware of it, but of course everybody's on a spectrum of awareness, right? Everyone's on a spectrum of awareness. Some people are absolutely deeply unconscious to what they're doing. And then there are people who have a little bit of awareness, more awareness, and some of us just outright know what the heck we're doing, but we don't care, right? Yeah. So anyways, projection can be done by blaming, okay, denying, justifying, detaching, guilt, making guilt, shame-inducing comments. Okay, so let me give you a couple examples of what I mean by this. So, for example, if you are in a relationship and you accuse your partner of cheating, or some kind of betrayal, or some kind of deception, something of that sort, you are accusing them of cheating, or being deceptive, or betraying you. But yet, you've already done it. You've already done the same thing that you're accusing them of doing. So you're accusing them of doing this thing, but you've already done the cheating. You've done the betrayal. You've been deceptive. You've told lies. You've slandered them. Whatever. It doesn't even matter what it is. But you're accusing them of doing the exact same thing that you've already done. That is a prime example of projection. Okay? So what that is that, and that's why I'm saying this is all covering up all these different layers and things that we have on the inside. You're trying to cover up the guilt that you feel. Because it's just easier to deal with the guilt if you put it on someone else, right? The guilt you feel is so painful. Okay? It's so painful. And you don't want to own or acknowledge it. Okay? You don't want to own or acknowledge this guilt because it's so painful that it must be separated from you. It must be separated from you. That's the only way that you can handle it. That's the only way your ego can handle it. That's the only way you can handle it is if you separate it from yourself and put it on someone else. That's a prime example of projection. I mean, that's got to be some kind of mechanism for you to actually go out there and do something you know you're not supposed to do, and you did it, and you don't feel good about it, and you feel shameful and guilty about it, and then you go back and you tell someone who's innocent, or accuse someone who's innocent of doing the exact same thing you've already done. So, you can kind of see where I'm going with this projection thing. I mean, you can't do that to someone at someone else's expense. You cannot do that. I mean, if you don't want to admit or acknowledge anything you've done, okay, fine. That's up to you. But don't do it at someone else's expense. Now, the next scenario is, let's say, for example, you call another person, which is either your partner, your friend, your colleague, your parent, whatever, your child. Oh, you're so lazy, selfish, controlling, mean. You cannot make any friends. You can't graduate. You can't become a star. these things. You're just telling them things that in actuality you're still speaking about yourself. Have you ever made judgments or labels or called people names when you're really speaking to yourself? I think a lot of people do this. I think this is really, really common, where you sit there. I think, in fact, almost all the time it's projection, where you're sitting there and you're saying something very mean about someone else. This is not constructive criticism. This is really like being mean and making judgments and labels and causing someone else to feel badly about themselves. Okay? Because you are really speaking about yourself, but you cannot face how you feel about yourself. You cannot acknowledge the way you feel about yourself. You're speaking about the traits that you have within yourself that you don't like, that you find displeasing, that you find uncomfortable, that you find painful. You can't handle it, so you go and you call other people names. That's projection. Because sometimes, and we really have to dig deep, because sometimes we're just sitting there and we're telling the truth, or we're keeping it real. No, you're not keeping it real. You're projecting, and you're being mean, because there's something within yourself that you don't want to deal with. You don't want to deal with your own insecurities, so you're going to sit there and call other people names. A lot of people do this. I'm telling you, a lot of people do this. That's how they feel about themselves. Have you ever told someone else, oh, you need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. You're looking kind of chunky. But you're really talking about yourself, because you have not been eating right. You haven't been exercising. You have not been eating healthily. But because you don't feel good about yourself and you don't want to admit to yourself that you don't have the discipline or the determination, and it's too uncomfortable and painful for you to admit this to yourself, that you want to do something that you're not letting yourself do, instead of dealing with it, instead of acknowledging it, instead of taking responsibility for what it is that you want, you go and find someone else. And that person may not even be fat or chunky, but because you are so deep in that illusion or that cover-up, that mask of your own insecurity and your avoidance and your inability to look at things squarely and admit it to yourself, you have to put it on someone else. So you sit there and you tell other people that they need to lose weight because they're looking chunky, but really you're talking to yourself. Yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've seen people do that a lot. I've had a lot of people do stuff like that to me already. And I've done projections like that too. Well, not on that level, not in that way. Not in that way. But yeah, definitely denying and blaming other people. Yeah, denying and blaming other people. I've done a lot of. But this type of thing, oh yeah, a lot of people said that to me because they're projecting. Because they don't like something that's going on inside of themselves, so they just automatically put it on you. So yeah, so you're saying these things that you also believe about yourself. You believe it about yourself. That's why you're saying it to other people. So that's another scenario. And just like the scenario I've already briefly described already about you being upset, and then you being upset, you are upset. You know that you're upset, but because you're so used to not acknowledging that you're upset, you sit there and you lie to yourself and you lie to other people. And then someone asks you if you're upset. You say, no, I'm not upset. And then you go and you elicit some kind of response out of them that reflects you, that reflects your inner state of being upset. And they retaliate, and you sit there and you say, well, oh, you get upset. You respond to their retaliation, okay? Because they know that you're projecting onto them, and you retaliate in response to them, okay? But then you justify it, and you say, well, you're the one that made me do this, and, you made me upset. And it's because you're so awful, I have to be upset with you. That's projection. And you feel justified in doing that. But it's not acceptable that they did it. But that was something you manipulated. It's not acceptable that they did it. but it's acceptable that you do it because somehow it's a response to what they're saying, so it's acceptable to you. It makes it acceptable to you. That's just ego. Ego. That's so much ego. It's just ego. You're not able to admit to yourself what you're feeling, so you have to just create all of this mess out of that. That's another scenario that I've already explained. Yeah. So justifying is justifying, denying, blaming, making comments and criticisms and mean things that you're saying. That's ways that we can project onto other people. That's what projection is. Well, at least the ways that we project are through those ways, those scenarios that I explained already. Okay, so if you see yourself in any of these examples, or you can relate somehow, you may not be the projector, but you could be the projectee. Perhaps you're in a relationship with someone who's doing this to you, and this possibly can affirm what you feel, what you're already feeling within yourself. Yeah, projection. So somehow, hopefully, you can see yourself in this, or you can see if you've been in this kind of relationship where you've been the one who's been projected on a lot. Yep. So now, I pretty much explained it all. But why is projection counterproductive and hindering and obstructive in relationships and with the self? Why is it something that we need to stop doing, or at least catch ourselves doing, so we're aware? So anyway, the first point is it's confusing. It's confusing, specifically in relationships. Projection causes confusion, especially for the person who's being projected on. But I'll explain why it's confusing to the person who's projecting too. But for the person who's being projected on, the projectee, I know I make up all these kind of words. It's kind of funny. But for the projectee, it's gotta be very confusing, because what happens is, just like I said, we're human beings. We take things on. We empathize, we react, okay, to what's being insinuated, what's being said, what comments are being made to that person's energy. That's just how we are wired to do. We're wired to take on other people's stuff and energy, okay? And if someone has this intention to elicit this kind of response out of you through their energy and their words and their intentions and their body language and whatever, we respond in kind. And sometimes it happens so quickly that we don't even realize we're responding or reacting in that way. Okay? So what happens is that it's confusing for the person who's being projected onto, because they take on these emotions, these feelings, these thoughts and behaviors from the person who's being projected, the person who's the projector. Okay? And if this goes on long enough, if they're in a relationship with this person that's in very close proximity, we have to interact with this person on a daily basis, they begin to take this on. And what this is called this is the term that's called, that comes from this, is called projective identification. Projective identification happens with, like I'm just explaining, with the person who's being projected onto by the projector, who is projecting their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, and like the above scenarios that I spoke to you about. After a while, that person takes on what is being projected onto them, and they identify with it. And eventually they start to say, okay, well, I must be selfish then, or I must be a bad person, or I must not be doing enough, or maybe I'm lazy, maybe I am selfish, because they took it on. It's confusing. It's confusing. And I mean, what I described there is not really confusing in the literal sense, but what I'm saying is that when that person starts to identify with what's being projected onto them, they lose their idea of who they are. They really start to think that what's the projections are really them and their thoughts and their emotions and their behaviors. This is a real thing that happens in psychology. This is a real thing that happens in relationships with someone who is projecting and constantly, avoiding and justifying and denying and calling that person names and telling them what to do and how to do it and the way to do it. But oh no, I don't need any help. Oh no, I don't need to fix my attitude. Oh no, I don't. It's all you. You're the one that needs to do this. I mean, think about what that's going to do for the person who's being projected on. Over time, that's going to create confusion because they're really not going to know. They're really going to think that this is possibly, maybe this is me. This is really me. Maybe this is really me. Maybe this is what I'm about. Maybe this is what I am. Maybe I really am fat. And they're not even fat. They can be skinny as a toothpick, but because that person is so insecure and does not want to admit and face things within themselves, and they project onto that person who is thinner that they are fat because they're in their own illusion, then the projectee is going to think, oh gosh, maybe I really am fat. Maybe I need to work out. You know what I'm saying? It's confusing. I mean, if, all of these, if you're going to be constantly blamed and you're going to be, if you take on the guilt, the shame, the labels, the insults, you are also, this is another thing too, if you are always being invalidated with what you're telling that person that you know about what they're doing or what what's going on, but because they deny, they avoid, block, and they're always being invalidated, I mean, that also is going to cause a lot of doubt too. And of course, for the projectee, I mean, if you don't have a sense of an awareness, if you don't really have deep awareness about yourself, it's easy to get sucked into this type of understanding or sucked into this knowing or not knowing these lies, okay? You have to have an awareness, okay? But I think the main reason why so many people fall into this projective identification is because they stick around for a long time, or they're in close proximity. Sometimes they cannot even help but see this person. They don't have an awareness of self, and that's why they fall into this category of thinking, okay, well, this must be me. I must be what this person is telling me. Or those thoughts or feelings and impulses that are being projected onto me. I'm telling you, it's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing. And also, it can be confusing for the projector as well, because, first of all, they've already convinced themselves. I mean, like I said, it depends on the spectrum of an awareness or awareness that they're on. But if they have already convinced themselves, denied or avoided certain truths about themselves, okay, they made themselves believe certain thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are not theirs, but it really belongs to someone else. Well, guess what? That is going to deepen the illusion. That's going to deepen the illusion. That is going to strengthen that protective self mechanism within themselves. It's not strengthen. It's going to strengthen it. It's going to deepen the illusion about themselves, their world, their relationships. That's going to create dissonance within themselves. And that's going to create more conflict for themselves. Okay? That's what's going to happen. It's confusing also for the projector, because they're really lying to themselves, but if that person who is being projected on, the projectee, identifies with these projections, and which is the projective identification, then that's just going to create a deeper illusion. That's going to create even more confusion, because there's going to be dissonance within that person who's projected on, because somehow they know that what's happening is not true. It's not a true them. It's a projective attachment that they've taken on, okay? So that's going to create dissonance within themselves. That's going to create some kind of conflict within themselves. That's going to create more of a problem for them. That's also going to create a problem for the projector, because they're just deepening the illusion. They're creating deeper dissonance within themselves. Because, I mean, if you are going to be engaging in this type of way, that is going to create conflict. That's going to create conflict. If you're sitting there and you have the truth and then you have an illusion, that's going to create conflict within yourself. It's going to. And you're going to have to keep upholding this illusion, which is this protective mechanism. You're going to have to keep maintaining that. That's gonna create conflict. That's going to create more dissonance. That's going to create more stress for you. Okay? It creates unnecessary problems. Let's just say sabotage. It's going to create sabotage. It's going to sabotage you, and it's going to sabotage the relationship. Because for the projector, if those issues are not being faced, it's going to create further dissonance, like I said. It's going to keep the defense mechanism in place to continue to cope with those things that you're not dealing with. Cope and, keep at bay, avoid and deny and ignore what's coming up. That's going to create more stress and burden and pressure to continue this way within yourself. Of course. And then that's what you're doing with yourself. So then for your relationships, what is that going to do? That's going to create more dissonance in your relationships as well. Because you're trying to uphold all of these lies and illusions that you've created for yourself. That's going to create fights, arguments, issues, all this trouble, all this stuff that could have been avoided. Okay? All of this stuff could have been avoided if you just to get real with yourself. Or if you're the projectee, all that person has to do is get real with themselves. That's it. They just have to get real with themselves. The person who's the projectee may not feel safe or understood or trust you to an extent because of this behavior. I mean, if you cannot sit there and rely on someone to tell you the truth and tell you how they feel and tell you how they feel about themselves, or just tell you the truth in general. If you're not going to tell someone the truth, how can someone else trust you? They can't trust you. So trust is definitely going to break down in that relationship. The projectee is going to feel misunderstood. They're not going to feel safe because everything they're trying to do, they're trying to, compromise. They're trying to come together. They're trying to get to the bottom of certain things. And all that's happening is denial, avoidance, justification, blaming. How are you going to feel safe with that? You can't really feel safe in that kind of situation. You can't. And of course, that is going to create problems for that person who is going through that. I mean, already for the projector's already feeling this. And that's the whole reason why this issue is going on. Because it's going to create more of a lower self-confidence and self-esteem. I mean, you can't be in that kind of environment and have your self-esteem intact. And like I said, there's so many things that seem to contradict itself. Because yes, you can be unaffected by what other people do, But because it's so difficult to do that, and it takes a whole crap load of self-awareness and constant spiritual connection, and being present, fully present all the time, to understand that what's happening really is not, it's not of me, it's something what this other person is doing to me, or what this other person is projecting on me. It takes so much to do that, to be aware. So many of us, we take on, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's human nature. It's just natural for us to do that. But you have to be very aware, and you have to be spiritually elevated, and you have to be on a certain level to know that this is not the truth. You have to be very aware. Okay? But like I said, the majority of us are not like that. You know, we take on. Especially, for example, if this is going to be your parent, do you know how difficult that's going to be if that's your parent and you grew up with them, and all they're doing is projecting, and you're the one who has to do it this way, and you being a child and trying to grow up and trying to learn who you are and trying to impress them and get approval and validation, and all they're doing is telling you that you're not doing anything right. All they're doing is blaming. All they're doing is justifying what they're saying to you. All they're doing is projecting their own insecurities onto you. I mean, that is going to create some lower self-esteem, especially in that type of environment and relationship where it's like you have no choice but to be around that person, and you've grown up with that person, and everything they're saying to you is, you know, based off of their own stuff that they're avoiding, based off of their projections onto you. That's going to lower your self-esteem. I'm pretty sure that's going to lower your self-esteem. That is going to lower your self-esteem as a child, because you're not aware yet. You don't know who you are yet. You didn't even get a chance to know yourself yet, because you're just being projected all this stuff that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the other person. But because you were raised, and because you love them, respect them, trust them, take whatever they say as prophecy or truth, you're going to think that everything they're projecting onto you is the truth. So that's what creates the lower self-esteem and the well-being. So I hope you understand what I mean by that. When you get a little bit older and you get a little more conscious and you get a little bit more aware, and you're choosing the relationships that you are around, the people that you're around, and you know, and you have enough awareness that they're doing this, then you can take yourself away from that. Or if it's projecting, but it's not to the level where it's so damaging to the point where, you know, it's going to make you so angry like that, you can say, well, I'm not going to engage in this type of thing with you, this scenario, because I realize you're just projecting. And it doesn't matter whether they admit it or not. You have enough awareness within yourself to know, okay, that's not true. You're projecting. That's not true. So it's really, ultimately what I'm saying, it's all about awareness. It's about awareness. Now the next point is, obviously you cannot heal yourself or the relationship. And this is speaking to the projector. You cannot heal yourself or the relationship if this projecting thing goes on. Okay? You cannot. You cannot heal the relationship or yourself. Healing requires that you acknowledge your stuff. You can't heal what you don't deal with. So healing cannot occur within the self or within the relationship if something is not being acknowledged. If you are not acknowledging yourself, if you're not acknowledging your issues and your troubles and your insecurities, if you're not acknowledging what's going on inside of yourself, you cannot heal. Your growth is stunted. Your development is stunted. Your healing is hindered. It cannot go on if you are not acknowledging something. Absolutely. Like that's 100% truth. You cannot you cannot heal what you don't acknowledge. You cannot do it. It's not possible. No such thing as healing without exposure or acknowledgement. There's no such thing. Okay? Because if you don't acknowledge what's going on, I'm pretty sure I've said this a few other times before, if you do not acknowledge what's going on within yourself, those issues fester. They fester. It's just like a wound. If you don't expose that wound to oxygen, to air, so that the body can heal itself, so the body can receive oxygen in order to start rebuilding those cells and putting over a protective barrier over it or whatever. But your body needs oxygen to heal. If it does not have oxygen, if that wound is covered up and it's hot and sweaty, well, guess what? It's going to get more bacteria and more microorganisms, and it's going to wreak havoc on your body. And then it's going to get into your cells, get into your bloodstream, and it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause some serious illness. That's from a wound perspective. If you cover up that wound, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So you have to take off the Band-Aid or take off whatever it is you're putting on it, air it out. Obviously, if it's not like a super deep, I don't know what kind of wound that is where you need stitches and, Anyway, I'm not trying to get graphic. Okay. What I'm saying is if it's that kind of wound, it's like a really superficial wound. You need that thing, you need it to air out. That it needs air, some kind of air for it to heal. It's the same thing with us. We need to expose things. We need to acknowledge things. We need to bring things out. Those issues are going to fester if they remain unresolved, and eventually it becomes worse and it wreaks havoc. And in your relationships, guess what? Your relationships are going to get worse. Because if you're festering and your wounds are festering and you continue to deny and avoid and you continue to project, you're going to destroy your relationship. Because at the end of the day, your relationship is a reflection of what's going on with you. It is. It always is. Even for the projectee, the person's being projected on. Both of you and this other person came together because you have lessons to learn with each other. There's something within you both that you need to heal. Even if you may be polar opposites, there's something between the both of you that you need to heal, that you need to learn from with each other. Okay? So relationships are a reflection of the things we need to heal. The things, it's a reflection of the issues or the problems that we need to heal within ourselves. Okay? So that's for sure. Relationships are the mirror to the self. So you cannot heal if you don't deal with yourself. You cannot heal. Absolutely. So in order to heal your relationships, you must heal yourself. Because I don't know if any of you have gone through that, or you've just gotten to the point in your life where you know you've healed and you know you're better than you used to be, and didn't your relationships change? Didn't your relationships change at all? The dynamic with your relationships? Didn't some people fall away and they leave? Did they leave? Did you get better people in your life? You know what I mean? Because this is like with your healing journey, you're going to get different people. And the people who are based on the old you are going to fall away. Or that your current relationships or relationships you were having with people that you've always had a relationship with, the dynamic changes. Because what's going on inside of you has changed. So your outer relationships are going to change as well. So anyway, so how do we stop this projecting behavior? Well, first of all, for those who do not know that they're projecting, so they're on the spectrum of awareness where they are deeply unconscious as to what they're doing, and they're not aware at all about what's going on inside of them. Guess what? You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to stop that projecting behavior. But of course, if you're watching this And you know what projection is, and maybe you're just watching it because you want to know what the heck projection is. If if you are really listening to this and you're taking in what I'm saying and you're saying, oh, I think I do that, well then guess what? You have a lot of awareness. You have awareness. So therefore you can stop doing that. Now if you are doing this, but you cannot admit to yourself that you're doing it, or you're not aware that you're doing it, well, you can't stop the behavior because you're not aware of it. You don't know that you're doing it, right? Those people who do not know that they are engaging in projecting behaviors, like I said, it's a deep subconscious defensive mechanism. Deep. But it doesn't have to be so deep with other people. It's just, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's a spectrum. And I think that was created in young childhood, where this is about sexual abuse too. This is about sexual abuse. It's personal development, but it's really about people who've gone through sexual abuse, right? So if you've gone through some kind of trauma where it's like you had to protect yourself, and you created this strong defense mechanism in your brain, and you do not realize that you're projecting, then, that's something that needs to be dismantled, and possibly I would say, you should go to therapy for that. But if you're not aware that you're doing it, then, you know what I mean? You're not aware that you're doing it, then you can't do anything about it. So either way, it's always about awareness. If you're not aware, you're not gonna heal it. And like I said, when I go back to talking about when I was talking about trauma and childhood wounds, yes, if you're sexually abused, or if you're abused in some way, physically or emotionally, you know what I mean? And it's to the point where it's debilitating and it's wreaking havoc on your life, then yes, you should go and get some therapy, or should get some help for that. I got therapy for what I went through too, and it made a world of a difference. So then I was better able to have awareness to see what I was doing, and the things that weren't working, and the things that were coming directly from that type of experience that I had. So it's really just about awareness. And that has to start with you wanting to be willing to look at yourself and look at the, traumas or the problems that you had when you were younger, in order to get yourself to that place of understanding where all your behaviors and issues are coming from. So that's just what I think. Everybody's different. Everybody has different levels of awareness, like I said. And there are some of us that are, like I said, who are aware to the degree of our behaviors and our habits. We're aware of what we're doing. We're aware. So if you happen to suspect that you are someone who's projecting, you're aware that you're doing this, well then, guess what? You can work on it yourself. And you can stop, or at least minimize the amount of times that you project onto people, as long as you're aware. So you're really the one I'm talking to. If you're aware, then of course you can stop doing it yourself, because I did the same thing. I worked on myself very, very hard. Worked on myself very, very hard on emotional, mental, spiritual level. Worked very hard. So I don't think I project nearly as much as I used to do, because I'm a lot more aware of myself. Plus, I've healed those wounds. I've healed a lot of those wounds. And of course, it's continuous. It's never going to stop. But I've healed, just really the nasty, festery, painful wounds. Okay, those wounds that came from that really big wound that I had being sexually abused. Okay, but I've healed a lot of those wounds outside of that. Okay, and that has caused me to be real with myself. It's caused me to look at myself squarely. It's caused me to, it forced me to see myself. When you heal yourself, you have to see yourself. When you're trying to develop self-esteem, self-confidence, you have to see yourself. There's nowhere to go but in. There's nowhere to go but in. So when you do that and you get real with yourself, you're not going to project onto people because you're real with yourself. You can see yourself. You can see what you're doing. You can see what works and what doesn't work, and what you hate and what you don't like, and what does this to you, what does that to you. You're aware. And when you're aware, you can make decisions and you can choose to do things, right? Okay, so anyway, for you who is aware that you're projecting, for you, this is mainly for the people who, or for you if you are the projector, okay? So if any given situation you're about to fault find, blame, label, judge, induce guilt or shame on someone else. So you're feeling that urge to do that impulse to do that. You gotta freeze for a moment. Don't say anything. Freeze. Check what's going on inside of you. Check your inner state. Check yourself. This is what people talk about. Check yourself. Check yourself. Check your inner state and your feelings. What are you feeling? Because guess what? That's your feelings. I'm talking to you, the projector here. What are you feeling? Angry, resentful, ashamed, and sad? And, you probably got into the habit of not being able to acknowledge or face what you're feeling. But you're feeling something. If you're going to sit there and fault find or blame or label or judge or say something guilt or shame inducing, you are feeling something. You're feeling something that's making you want to say this to someone else. Anger, resentment, feeling ashamed or sad. What do you believe about yourself in the moment that's making you want to say this? You really have to dig deep here. This is about digging, and if you're not willing to dig, you're not going to figure that out. Okay? Do you feel small? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel like victimized? Do you feel like a victim? Do you feel awful? Do you feel like powerless? Do you feel weak? You just have to sit there and try to figure out what it is that's causing you to want to say these things to people. Because there's a reason. There's an originating thought within yourself that's going to make you sit there and think, okay, I need to say this to another person. That's going to make you want to attack someone. If you're going to want to attack someone, there's a reason. There's something going on inside of yourself. Check yourself. Freeze and figure out what it is that you're going, or what you're thinking and what you're feeling because of what you're thinking. You need to understand that every emotion that you feel originates with you. You have to know this. This is a big point. You have to know this. Every emotion that you feel originates with you. Okay? I'm sorry to tell you. Everything you're feeling, it comes from you. And your thoughts are the originator of these emotions. I think I just briefly said that already. Yeah. Your thoughts are the originator of your feelings. No one can make you feel anything. No one can make you feel anything. Okay? It's just that, like I said, I was going back to talking about projective identification. Yes, and I was talking about people who become insecure and low self-esteem and start to doubt themselves because of what's being projected onto them. Well, I'm saying that that's if you have no awareness. If you don't have an awareness, and if you're not present within yourself and aware enough in yourself to know, to catch that automatic, I wouldn't say automatic, but that very quick process of you thinking whatever that person is saying is true, and then you go into fear, and then you start to retaliate or respond in that way because you think what that person is saying is true. Or you have to feel upset about what that person's saying. But that's how we're raised. That's how we're programmed to think. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because I know for a fact, for sure, okay, that you can choose what you want to feel. You can choose it. It's just about the thoughts that you're thinking. So if you choose to say to yourself, if somebody is attacking you, okay, if someone is attacking you or someone's saying something to you you do not like, you have a choice to decide whether to get upset or not. Or to smile, or to be quiet, or to walk away. You have a choice. You don't have to react in a certain way. You can choose how you want to react. You can choose how you want to react. Because I know when I was younger, and someone said something criticizing to me, and it wasn't even that bad, I would get upset and say, oh my God, why are you saying that to me? I can't believe you said that. And I get angry. But it was only because I was insecure. I was just trying to cover something up. Okay? But I did not know at that time, because I wasn't aware enough to know that I could choose to think differently about what they were saying. But because I thought it was an attack, okay, I thought that they really meant me harm, and sometimes they didn't. Many of the times they didn't want it. They didn't cause me harm. They just wanted to tell me something and point out something to me that I should know. But I took it as, oh, you're attacking me, or that means that I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough. You see what I mean? It comes from a thought. If you're thinking, okay, that person is just trying to help me, then you would not react in that way. Because they're saying, okay, they're just trying to help me. There's nothing to be upset about. They're just trying to help me. And then I would completely change my response, because I would think differently from what I would originally be thinking if I was thinking that they were attacking me, or they're trying to make me look bad, or they're trying to make me out to be this or that, or this or that, the other. That's what I'm trying to say to you. No one can make you think anything or feel anything about yourself unless you give them permission. So if you're a projector, if you project and say, oh, it's your fault, you're the reason why I'm acting this way, you're the reason why I'm angry, it's you. Well, I mean, you're so lazy. I mean, I have to get upset. I mean, listen, no. You're projecting, and everything you're saying is not empowering because it's not true. You can feel however you want to feel. If you're angry, it's because you're choosing to be angry. It originated with you. It did not originate with the other person. Doesn't matter what the other person did. It's originating with you. You choose to think the way you want to think. You choose to feel the way you want to feel. You want to feel upset, then guess what? You chose to feel upset. No one made you feel upset. Even if someone's being lazy, well, guess what? They're just lazy. Does that have to make you upset? Do you have to point that out? Do you have to make it seem as though that person is supposed to be shamed because they're lazy? Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, it's all about the thought. It's all about the thought. It's all about the thought. You don't have to feel. No one can make you feel anything or think anything about yourself unless you give them permission, conscious permission. That's what I realized. That's where the real power is, because once you realize you can choose how you want to react and respond, and choose how you want to feel about yourself, and choose your world, and choose your life, and choose, how you feel about yourself. Listen, that's real power. Anyway, so this is another point to the projector, okay? We all have stuff, okay? So you as a projector, if you're going out there and blaming other people and telling them what to do and telling them what they're not doing right, and pointing blame and pointing the finger, you need to understand that we all have stuff, okay? There are things that we all need to heal and acknowledge within ourselves, and fears and traumas and issues that need to be addressed. Life is going to bring you stuff to deal with. And life is going to bring you with your own set of issues and your own set of problems and your shortcomings that you need to solve. So listen, if you are sitting there telling other people that it's them, you did this to me, you, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You ought to be blaming, accusing, justifying, denying what you're doing, denying, oh no, I don't need help. I'm okay. Oh no, I don't need to change. I don't need help. You need help. It's you. You're the one at fault. You're the one that cheated on me. You're the one that needs to lose weight, not me. How could you say such a thing? You're the one that's so awful. Listen. All that projecting stuff, that's trying to make you protect your fragile ego. Okay? This is one thing you cannot get away from. I mean, you can sit there and avoid it all you want. But at the end of the day, we all have stuff. You cannot sit here and act as if you do not have issues. Yes, you do. You have issues just like the other person does. It may not be the same issues, but you have issues. Okay? You're not the only human in the world that does not have issues and problems. And that everything is the other person's fault. No. That's a very childish way of thinking about things. That's a very childish thing. And I really believe that's where it comes from anyways, childhood. Yeah. Everyone has stuff. So if you understand and you get this through your head, and you get this into your understanding about yourself and other people and relationships, and you break that illusion that you think you have nothing to deal with, you have nothing to work on, you have nothing to improve on, you have no faults, no weaknesses, nothing, no mistakes. Listen, everybody has stuff. Everybody has issues to deal with. You are not perfect humanistically. You are perfect spiritually. We're all perfect spiritually. But humanistically, you have a whole lot of stuff you have to deal with. I have a whole lot of stuff I have to deal with. Everyone has a whole lot of stuff that they have to deal with. But until you get to the point where you realize, okay, I have stuff too. And it's not just about Billy or Jack or Jerry or Sandra or whoever, until you get to the point where you realize, okay, I need to own my own stuff, you know what, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This, healing is not going to happen. But we all have our own stuff. And I think that's really what's the heart of projection, is just not wanting to own your stuff, not wanting to deal with your stuff, not wanting to admit to yourself that you have insecurities, inadequacies, feelings of inadequacies, inferiority, not being enough, not feeling enough, being powerless and weak, and not this, that. It's the fear. Once you get over the fear of understanding that just because you have weaknesses and issues and problems and troubles and you don't really like who you are, guess what? You'll find other people feel the same way too. That can, it's really just about, breaking that idea that if I have fear, it's going to be the death of me. Because that's what fear is. It feels like if something happens, it's going to be the death of me. Somehow it's going to make me less than. Well, that's really what the fear is. I mean, that's really what insecurity is I'm not enough, or I'm not going to be up to par, or I'm not as good as other people. But once you realize that this fear is not true, and it's an illusion, and then everything you're thinking about yourself is an illusion, your insecurities are illusions too. Okay, I mean, I know, okay, you have to follow what I'm saying. They're real, but they're illusions because it's something you created within yourself. You think you're not good enough, but that's an illusion. You think you're not worthy of love. That's an illusion. Your insecurities are real to you, but they're illusions. That's what I'm saying. Once you dispel the fear that, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, this is all the fear, this is the stuff you're trying to hide. But everyone has this fear on some level. Everyone has this fear. And just because you don't feel good about yourself, that does not mean it's going to be the death of you for other people to know that you don't feel good about yourself. In fact, you'll gain a lot more, you get a lot more intimacy, and a lot more people will be attracted to you if you were just to admit your vulnerabilities and admit the things that's going on inside of you. You would actually get a lot more attention and intimacy from other people, because we are all attracted to people that are real. And if you're going to sit there and project and block things off and deny and act like it doesn't work, listen, you're going to push a lot of people away. You're going to push a lot of people away if you do not admit to yourself, admit your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, your insecurities. You're going to push a lot of people away. So just know that you have stuff and everyone else has stuff. Okay? It's not going to be the death of you to admit that you don't like yourself, or you think that you are ugly, or you think that you are not beautiful enough, or you feel unlovable, or you feel insecure or vulnerable. It's not going to be the death of you to admit that. And I think that is the key. And that is really the essence of the ego, because the ego thinks that if I admit my insecurities, my insufficiencies, my inadequacies, it's going to be the death of me. That's a really big characteristic of a really strong ego. An ego that is really strong. I mean, very, very strong. Because the ego to all, yes, okay. Yep, I'm getting it now. The ego has to make sure that it does not seem weak and it does not seem insufficient, because it will be the death of the ego to admit any kind of insufficiencies. So at all costs, it will fight to make it seem powerful and make it seem sure and certain, to ward off any kind of weaknesses, because in order to admit weakness is to admit fear, which is what the ego is really built on, is this fear. So that is really the essence of it. It's a strong egoic pattern that is there. Strong. If you will, at all costs, you will make yourself right at all costs. You will make yourself certain and sure and right, and justify the things that you are doing that other people are doing, but it's right just because you're doing it, and it's wrong because they're doing it. I mean, that's a strong ego. That is characteristic of a very strong ego. But I'm telling you, the ego is not you. And I think I've said that before. The ego is not you. It's a false you. It's a false self. It's a humanistic part of ourselves, but it's not you. It's not your true self, your true essence and authenticity. So it's your ego, but it's not to say it like, oh, that's just this thing that's inside of you that you're not responsible for. You're responsible for your ego. You can render your ego a lot powerless if you really want to. You can put it to the side if you want to. You can keep it at bay if you want to. You can manage it if you want to. And if you get to the point of spiritual enlightenment, you can, or to the highest level of spiritual enlightenment, the ego won't affect you at all. You'll be egoless. But anyway, sorry, that was long-winded. But the next point is, listen to what other people are saying to you. Listen to what other people are saying to you. What is the common thread? Listen to the common thread about what people are saying to you and reacting to you, and how they're reacting to you in your encounters with them. It's all about awareness. I keep saying this over and over again. It's about awareness. So listen to what people are saying to you. Do you listen to them? Are they saying, you don't listen, you never listen to me? Everything I try to say, you don't listen to me. All you do is talk, but you don't listen to me. Listen to that. How many people are saying that to you? Okay? Can they talk to you? Do they feel like, oh, I can't talk to you? You never listen to me. Or every time I say something to you, you shut me down. You tune me out. You ignore me. You don't validate what I say. You don't acknowledge what I'm saying. Can they talk to you? Do they not feel comfortable talking to you? There's got to be a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that. Do they always have to fight with you? Is it always a fight with you? Do they always have to fight with you? Is it always a war every time they see you? Every time you get into an argument or a situation, is it a war? Or if you're the projectee, sorry projectee, if you are projecting, if people are projecting onto you, is it always a fight with them? Yeah. You know that it's a fight with them because you're always there trying to tell them something that they're not listening to and trying to explain, and they're not validating what you're saying. You know? They're constantly making it out to be you. It's always you. But you already know. I mean, if you're a projectee, I mean, you pretty much know. I'm pretty sure you know. And especially after all the things that I've said, you've gained some more insight as to whether you're experiencing this kind of projection on whatever scale you're on or whatever side you're on. You're getting more insight into that if you're aware. But anyway, you just have to listen to what people are saying. And you have to get to the point that if you're hearing the same thing from a few other people and they're telling you over and over again that you're controlling, or they're telling you that you don't listen to them, if they're telling you that you are a hard nut to crack, or you're stubborn, or they just can't get through to you, you have to listen to that. And that's the reason why you're not listening. Or that's why they're saying that, because they can't get through to you. But if people are saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over, it's because you have to listen. And you're not listening. So it's really about listening to what other people are saying to you if you're willing. If you're not willing, then what's the point? Right? You have to consider that maybe they're telling you the truth. Perhaps they're telling you the truth. Maybe they're telling you the truth about your behavior and what you're saying, or what it is that you're fighting to the death about with them. You got to pay attention and you can learn more about yourself by what people are saying to you. Just a common thread of what people are saying to you. Maybe they have something to teach you and tell you about yourself. But anyway, it's just about awareness. It's always about awareness. It's about willingness and awareness. If you're at the point where you can be aware that you're doing this, or that you have tendencies and behaviors that you know you need to shed, well, it's just about awareness and willing to work on it based off of the awareness. So we're all in the process of becoming and growing and learning, and it takes time to recognize or admit the patterns. Admit it. You can know it, but you don't admit it sometimes. You don't admit it to yourself. And the habits we carry that become a problem to ourselves as well as others. Whatever it is, whether it's projection or another habit, and you understand that you have it and you're going to work on it, don't be so hard on yourself, because, we're all working toward what we're trying to achieve. But, just as long as you're aware, just work on it. And before you know it, you'll get to the place where you don't do nearly as much as you used to do. Okay? So that's it for today, guys. Hopefully that helped you out. on some level. And thanks for listening to A Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Wholeness After Sexual Abuse. If you enjoyed this, you can subscribe to this podcast to hear more episodes. Okay, so next week we will explore how to overcome fear, the need to control others. So be sure to tune in, and until next time, take care.